Happy Thursday, everybody. Hi, this is Mary Miller, speaking to you on behalf of Seatuck Environmental Association. Storytime will start in just a few moments. Today we have a classic book. It's called Make Way for Ducklings. The story is based in a city in the United States, in the state of Massachusetts. It's based in Boston, Massachusetts. So if you're familiar with that city, you may recognize some of the sites in the book. And of course, it's about ducklings. And the mom and the dad happens to be a Mallard family. So you have Mrs. Mallard, Mr. Mallard, as well as the ducklings. So you'll get to see them in the story. Now, something that I've seen out in the wild is, sure, I've seen ducks, I'm sure you have too, and there's something really important to know. There are quite a few people I've seen throwing bread in water for ducks to eat, and you may not know it, but that's actually not good for ducks. So it's something that we'd like to avoid is things like bread or crackers or popcorn. Better choices are things like peas, actually like frozen peas that you've defrosted, or cracked corn or oats. So it's very important that if we are feeding wildlife, and basically wildlife should really be eating what they can find, but we certainly don't want to give them things that harm them, such as bread and crackers and things like I mentioned. Okay, so we've got Thursday, 2:30 is story time for Seatuck. Tuesday as well, Miss Michelle from our Little Peepers Forest Preschool does a story on Tuesdays at 2:30. And then I've got this one, and I also work at the preschool, part of Seatuck's education program. Of course, any ages can set up programs with Seatuck in other times to do outdoor programs, but this time, the way things are, being carefully taken care of, actual Zoom programs can be set up with Seatuck for classrooms for this spring. So that would be something to look into. Seatuck also does a lot of conservation type programs, on behalf of fish, on behalf of horseshoe crabs. So there's always things to get involved with Seatuck. So you can take a look at the website to keep up on all those opportunities, as well as special events and the videos of every afternoon, Monday through Friday, this time of year. We've got an activity going on, or a story, a report from the field at 2:30 every day, and those are all on video, so if you've missed some, you want to go back and take a look, there's a lot to see. So I'm going to switch the camera around and we'll go take a look, our first look at our book. And the book was written almost 80 years ago. So if you have a grandparent who is, say, in the 50, 60, 70, or even younger age range, they may, or your parents may be familiar with this book. So we'll see. So hang on, I'm going to switch over and we'll start our story. Okay, so here's our book. And I always this is another Robert McCloskey book. He's the author. And I had read earlier in the spring 2 of his other books. One was Blueberries for Sal. Another was One Morning in Maine. And it's fun to look at the pictures, and it really does give you a hint about how long ago the book was written, or if it was written about a time that's a long time ago. And right here on the cover, look at those cars. I guess you could call classic cars in a classic book. So Make Way for Ducklings. Let's count how many ducklings there are. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yes, 8. Okay, so written by Robert McCloskey. Okay, so you'll see that the pictures here are all drawings, just like a brown and white. So I'm going to show you before we get started. The book is about mallards, as I told you. And I'm going to show you, oops, I just lost one page, but let me get a better picture here of, okay, show you the male. Here's the male mallard. And we know that in birds, the beautiful bird is usually the male. And here we got the male mallard. And Mrs. Mallard is actually just a plain brown and white color. For some reason in my book, they've put them on different pages, and my bookmark just slipped, but here it is. Okay, very different looking. And this is the female Mrs. Mallard. So that's what she actually would look like. Okay, all right, so let's get started. Make way for Ducklings. We've got Mr. and Mrs. Mallard here. Okay, and it looks like they're scouting something out. They're taking a look. They're way up high, flying, and they're looking out. Mr. and Mrs. Mallard were looking for a place to live. But every time Mr. Mallard saw what looked like a nice place, Mrs. Mallard said it was no good. There were sure to be foxes in the woods or turtles in the water, and she was not going to raise a family where there might be foxes or turtles. So they flew on and on. Here we go. And again, it looks like they're still scouting out. We've got some trees here, and it looks like a little island and a bridge. But when they got to Boston, that's the city I mentioned in Massachusetts, they felt too tired to fly any further. There was a nice pond in the public garden with a little island on it. The very place to spend the night, quacked Mr. Mallard. So down they flapped. Oh, what's going on here? I think those are the tail feathers. Doing a little hunting for food, it looks like. So they're close to it. So it must be a park. So we got some people reading the newspaper, enjoying the outdoors. Next morning, they fished for their breakfast in the mud at the bottom of the pond, but they didn't find much. Just as they were getting ready to start on their way, a strange, enormous, that means big, bird came by. It was pushing a boat full of people. And there was a man sitting on its back. Good morning, quacked Mr. Mallard, being polite. The big bird was too proud to answer, but the people on the boat threw peanuts into the water. So the mallards followed them all around the pond and got another breakfast better than the first. Okay, so let's see that big bird. Is that a real bird? Take a look. It's right here. It looks like a swan. And people are sitting on benches, and this is basically, yeah, it's a boat on the water, so people are getting a ride on the water. And here's the gentleman in the back. He must be steering the boat. Wait a minute, did they say that they gave peanuts to those birds? We know that's not really a good idea. Not really a good idea. Just like chips, crackers, popcorn, bread. Not a good idea. Okay, but we'll overlook that in the story. They probably didn't know that when they wrote the book, but we know that now. Okay, we got back in a park, kids riding bikes, a little park bench. I like this place, said Mrs. Mallard as they climbed out on the bank and waddled along. Why don't we build a nest and raise our ducklings right in this pond? There are no foxes, no turtles, and the people feed us peanuts. What could be better? Good, said Mr. Mallard, delighted that at last Mrs. Mallard had found a place that suited her. But, oh my goodness, watch out. Look out, squawked Mrs. Mallard. All of a dither, you'll get run over. And when she got her breath, she added, this is no place for babies. with all those horrid things rushing about. We'll have to look somewhere else. Ooh, looks like he's going fast. Look at the way his shirt is blowing and his tie is blowing because he's going so fast. All right, so it looks like we're on a search again. There looks like Mr. Mallard and then Mrs. Mallard. Okay, and they're flying over. This looks like a city. All those tall buildings, like apartment buildings. So they flew over Beacon Hill, around the State House, but there was no place there. Still searching, still looking around. There were those old-fashioned cars. They looked in Lewisburg Square, but there was no water to swim in. They definitely need water, wouldn't you say? Here's a place. Then they flew over the Charles River. So that's all this area. This is all, even though it's not blue, like usually in a picture, the water is blue. This is the river, and here's a bridge going over the river. Then they flew over the Charles River. This is better, quacked Mrs. Mallard. That island looks like a nice, quiet place, and it's only a little way from the public garden. Yes, he said, remembering the peanuts. That looks like just the right place to hatch our ducklings. So they chose a cozy spot. How does that look? Cozy spot among the bushes near the water and settled down to build their nest. And only just in time, for now they were beginning to molt. All their old wing feathers started to drop off, and they would not be able to fly again until the new ones grew in. Yes, many ducks molt, they lose their feathers once or twice in the course of a year. They get new feathers. So let's see how this whole place looks. Pretty good. Aw. Hey, Michelle and Kimberly and Ellis and Miles. Yeah, that was a big swan, wasn't it? And this place does look perfect. There's Mr. Mallard is drinking right out of the pond. I think we like this place. Oh, now who is this? Looks like a friendly gentleman. But of course, they could swim. And one day they swam over to the park on the riverbank, and there they met a policeman named Michael. Michael fed them peanuts. Oh no, not again. And after that, the Mallards called on Michael every day. I guess the ducks didn't know that the peanuts were not the best kind of food for them to eat. Oh, something has happened. Take a look. And do you remember how many ducklings there are? And we can count the eggs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 eggs. After Mrs. Mallard had laid eggs in the nest, she couldn't go to visit Michael anymore because she had to sit on the eggs to keep them warm. She moved off the nest only to get a drink of water or to have her lunch or to count the eggs and make sure they were all there. She knows if any fox or turtle were around, that could be a problem for those little eggs. Okay, and now something has happened. Take a look. What have we got? There's the dad. We've got babies. Oh, I see that number 8. Yeah, we have 8 little ducklings. One day, the ducklings hatched out. First came Jack, then Cack, then Lack, then Mack and Knack and Owack and Pack and Quack. They all rhyme. Mr. and Mrs. Mallard were bursting with pride. It was a great responsibility taking care of so many ducklings, and it kept them very, very busy. And you may have heard, there's a word, or maybe you haven't heard this word, it's called imprinting. And within the first day or two that baby ducklings, and especially geese, are hatched, they imprint on the first big thing they see. So hopefully it's going to be their mom that they will then follow around. They imprint right on the biggest thing they see in the first or second, within the first or 2 days, 1 or 2 days after they're hatched. So based on the picture that we had on the cover, it looks like they've imprinted very well on the mom, so they follow wherever the mom goes. One day, and that's good, I would say that that's good for protection, because you don't want those little babies wandering all over the place, right? You want them to stick with their parents, because in this case, we have parents that take care of the babies. Not all parents do that. Some animals that we know, like horseshoe crabs, they lay the eggs and they're off, and the babies are on their own. One day, Mr. Mallard decided he'd like to take a trip to see what the rest of the river was like further on. So off he set. "I'll meet you in a week in the public garden," he quacked over his shoulder. "Take good care of the ducklings." "Don't you worry," said Mrs. Mallard. "I know all about bringing up children." And she did. So there she is. And he's taking his time going off. Oh, you know what I see here? I'm very surprised. It looks like some trash in the water. Well, that's a little disappointing, isn't it? So what did Mrs. Mallard do while Mr. Mallard was away? Well, she taught them how to swim and how to dive for food. Well, that's a lot of babies to take care of and to teach. She taught them to walk in a line, to come when they were called, and to keep a safe distance from bikes and scooters and other things with wheels. I agree with you, Miles and Ellis. Pollution is bad. We're sorry to see it in this book. Okay, so it looks like they learned how to line up behind Mom on the river, the Charles River. When at last she felt perfectly satisfied with them, she said one morning, "Come along, children, follow me." Before you could wink an eyelash, Jack, Cack, Lack, Mack, Knack, Gawack, Pack, and Quack fell into line just as they had been taught. Mrs. Mallard led the way into the water, and they swam behind her to the opposite bank. There they are, ready to go. Ooh, it looks a little busy where they are now. Is this safe? Do you think this is safe? Oh my goodness. And we can see the cars. Do they look like modern cars, or do they look old-fashioned? There they waded ashore and waddled along till they came to the highway. Mrs. Mallard stepped out to cross the road. Oh my goodness, do you think she knows how to cross the street? It doesn't look like it. Mrs. Mallard stepped out to cross the road. Honk, honk, went the horns on the speeding cars. Quack, went Mrs. Mallard as she tumbled back again. Quack, 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 went Jack, Cack, Lack, Mack, Knack, Whack, Pack, and Quack, just as loud as their little quackers could quack. The cars kept speeding by and honking, and Mrs. Mallard and the ducklings kept right on quack, quack, quacking. And the cars were honk, honk, honking. Oh, my. Oh, remember this man? Do you remember his name? They made such a noise that Michael came running, waving his arms and blowing his whistle. Yes, it's Michael, the police officer. He can hear all the noise, the cars, the quackers. He planted himself in the center of the road, raised one hand to stop the traffic, and then beckoned with the other, the way policemen do, for Mrs. Mallard to cross over. Oh, isn't that nice? So here they are. They're going to get a safe path. A safe path. And remember the name of the book? Make Way for Ducklings. Looks like that's what they're doing. As soon as Mrs. Mallard and the ducklings were safe on the other side and on their way down Mount Vernon Street, Michael rushed back to his police booth. Okay, he's running. He called Clancy at headquarters and said, "There's a family of ducks walking down the street." Clancy said, "Family of what?" "Ducks," yelled Michael. "Send a police car quick." Oh, yes, you remembered Michael. I see you remembered his name. Meanwhile, Mrs. Mallard had reached the corner bookshop and turned into Charles Street with Jack, Cack, Lack, Mac, Knack, Oack, Pack, and Quack all marching in line behind her. They're just right on the sidewalk. People look. Do they look? Do you think they're surprised to see little ducklings walking on their sidewalk? Look at his face. So funny. Everyone stared. Everyone stared. An old lady from Beacon Hill said, "Isn't it amazing?" And the man who swept the street said, "Well, now, ain't that nice?" And when Mrs. Mallard heard them, she was so proud she tipped her nose in the air and walked along with an extra swing in her waddle. And let's see, where are those little babies? Oh, there they are. We can see them underneath on the other side of the car. There they are. That must be Quack, the one in the back. Okay. Oh, my goodness, look at this. We've got how many police officers are helping these little ducks out? I see one here, and one here. When they came to the corner of Beacon Street, there was the police car with 4 policemen. Oh, where's the other one? That Clancy had sent from headquarters. The policemen held back the traffic so Mrs. Mallard and the ducklings could march across the street. Oh, here they are. They were so tiny I almost didn't see them. Here's the little duck and the ducklings going across the street. But everybody is kind of amazed. They're watching. I think we all stop. I know when I see the little ducks or geese with their little babies in the spring, I always stop and I look. I think everybody loves to see them. They're so cute. Right on into the public garden. There they go. There they go. Right back into the garden through the gates. Inside the gate, they all turned around to say thank you to the policemen. The policemen smiled and waved. Goodbye. How cute. Well, they look a little bigger in this picture, don't they? Cute. Oh, gotta get that page turned. Okay. When they reached the pond and swam across to the little island, guess who was there? Who was coming back to meet them on the island? Mr. Mallard, just as he had promised. See, there they are, coming across. They had learned how to swim, and there they go. They learned how to walk, and they learned how to swim from their mom. The ducklings liked the new island so much, they decided to live there. All day long, they follow the swan boats, and they eat peanuts. So here's the swan boat, and the tiniest little pictures on here. Guess who that is? There they are, following the big swan. And that is it. When the night falls, they swim to their little island and go to sleep. And there they are. And there's Mr. Mallard and Mrs. Mallard. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The end. So that was Make Way, and we know why it was called that. Make Way for Ducklings. The police officers helped them out. So, thank you for watching, and lots of times, fortunately these days, there are signs up in many places where you see ducks in the water, and there are signs that tell people, that teach them what kind of food is okay if you are going to feed ducks out in the wild. So something important to keep in mind. And thankfully, like I said, there are a lot of signs up now that educate people about what the right thing is and the wrong thing is. So thank you again for joining me for the story. Yes, good night, Ducklings, Ellis and Miles. Thanks for watching. Always good to see you here. And I'll see some of you at school tomorrow. And then next Thursday for another story. So this is Mary Miller signing off from Seatuck Environmental Association. Have a great day out in the outdoors. Maybe you'll see some ducks. Bye-bye.